Gather round and welcome back to Todd Talks College Football. And today we got an exciting episode. We're going to go ahead and react to this R.J. Young Fox College Football poll that was released today. And let me tell you something, folks. This is one of the worst polls I've ever witnessed in a preseason year in my life. This thing's an absolute abomination to the college football intellect of the fans of this sport. So we're going to break this down in some pieces here and just talk about where the hell they came up with this information, because it doesn't look like anything was done research-wise to develop this poll, which Fox Sports was out there promoting today all over my Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, polls. Everywhere I saw this poll, and it is an absolute heap of garbage, folks. So let's break it. Well, I don't even know where to start with this lackluster piece of work, but we're going to start at the Big 12. In the Big 12, this poll has K-State as their highest ranked team, followed by Texas Tech, Arizona State, Colorado in the top 25? You're kidding, right? Iowa State. Houston, a 4-18 that didn't really improve? Kansas, Arizona, TCU, before you get to the strongest team in the conference, the Baylor Bears. The Baylor Bears that ranked 44th in 9 teams ranked ahead of them coming out of the Big 12. This is the team that returns the number 3 points per game offense in the Big 12 last year against Big 12 competition. The number 1 total offense. 3rd in rushing yards per game. 4th in passing yards per game. They return the quarterback, both running backs, and the main receiver, leading receiver from last year. Now, can the defense get better? Absolutely. But to rank them as the number 10 team in the Big 12, and then you want to talk about even crazier, you got to drop 12 more spots before you find the Utah Utes ranked at number 56? Come on. This is an absolute... I'm at a loss for words what it is, but there is no way you can be ranking Arizona, Houston, Kansas, Colorado, TCU above Baylor. I'll give it to you if you want to say Kansas State or Texas Tech or Arizona State or Baylor, but those got to be your top 4. This is just complete ludicrousy. I don't even know if I said that right. Is that the right word? But it's out of control here with this first whack job poll that they've come out with here for the Big 12. I mean, it's just unbelievable. It gets better than this, folks. This is just the beginning of this lackluster piece of work, again, that's come out today, sponsored all over my social media account. All right, let's move on here to the ACC, where we got the Georgia Tech Ramblin' Wreck. 7 teams ranked above Georgia Tech going into the season. A team that brings back their leading starting heart of the team quarterback, their leading rusher, followed by their second leading rusher and the quarterback, their second leading receiver, a pretty good defense, and don't forget, a team that took the Georgia Bulldogs to 8 overtimes before conceding last year. And they bring back a lot of talent. Get a couple transfers in, and this team is not the 8th best team in the ACC. Are you kidding me? Listen to this. I mean, listen, Clemson is number 1 in the books in my country, in the country in my book. I'm going to give it to them. They got the best team coming back. Offensively, defensively, they got the best position groups. Now, can they put it all together and win a national title? We'll see. But going into the season, they've got to be ranked number 1. If you don't think Clemson's ranked number 1, you haven't really looked at the scouting report, looked at the players on this team. All right, you got SMU, Miami, Louisville, Syracuse, Florida State, North Carolina. Come on. Just because Bill Belichick's there doesn't mean that they're the seventh best team in the ACC. Georgia Tech, I'll give it to you. If you want to put Clemson, Miami, SMU, and then Georgia Tech, that's fine. If you want to put Miami, SMU, Georgia Tech in any way you want to go underneath Clemson, that's fine. But Florida State, yes, probably will be improved. We'll see in a couple weeks against Alabama just how improved they really are. That could put them into another tailspin, into another terrible year. But North Carolina, there's nothing coming out of North Carolina right now besides Jordan that is making any noise in the college football world. And yes, I'll give you, Louisville could be good. Syracuse is going to be best a 5-win team. They're probably not going to be hanging with a middle of the road SEC team in Tennessee coming out of the box. But this is still another piece of work putting Georgia Tech Ramblin' Wreck at 8 in this Fox Sports RJ Young preseason poll. All right, let's talk a little bit here about what's going on in this SEC portion of this poll. We've got Ole Miss and Missouri ranked above South Carolina and Texas A&M. That's just terrible. Terrible, I say. South Carolina is returning arguably the best quarterback in the SEC this year in Lenore Sellers. We got Ole Miss replacing the quarterback. We got Missouri replacing a lot of pieces. Texas A&M should be a very strong team, although I have them finishing about 8-4 just outside the playoffs. But I think way better than the 7-5 Missouri optimism that is out there. 6.5 is the over-under for that. We got Ole Miss, question marks everywhere on where this Ole Miss team's going to be. But what we do know is we know that South Carolina is going to be a strong contender to at least get to 9-3, maybe 10-2. Who knows where they can go from there? Playoff bound, probably. But to put Ole Miss and Missouri going in preseason above South Carolina and Texas A&M, again, just another lack of research, understanding what is really going on out here in this game of football by this poll. All right, let's continue on with a little bit more SEC talk here in this poll. So he's got Kentucky ranked at number 52, and Mississippi State ranked at number 58. 58, folks, put you in the top half of the college football class of what is there? 136 teams? Come on. That's in the top 40%. Mississippi State went 2-10 last year. They're going to probably go 2-10 again this year. If you look at their schedule, it's not even funny. He's got them ranked above teams like BYU, Army, Navy. Navy's returning off a 10-3 year with the better team than they had last year. They beat Notre Dame this year. They could go undefeated. Who the hell knows where they could go? But they're not ranked under Mississippi State or Kentucky for that matter. Arkansas, he's got Arkansas as the worst team in the SEC going into the season. Let me just tell you something, folks. I don't think Arkansas is some barn burner, probably a 6-6 team, but way the hell better than Mississippi State and this year's Kentucky product that's going to go on the field. We've got Minnesota ranked below these two teams. Liberty? And then the most fun of all is Toledo. He got Toledo ranked like 20-some spots behind Kentucky. They play the first week. Somehow Kentucky's a 9.5-point favorite. I'm thinking Toledo and the points there probably straight up. This is a heck of a good football team. Probably going to win the MAC. Is going to be in playoff contention at the end of the season as one of the best Power 6 teams. Got them ranked in the 70s. And Kentucky and Ole Miss. Don't want to put you in the same category as Mississippi State. But seriously, this is absolute bananas. This is crazy talk. No one is even doing any research on anything with this. Let's do a couple real quick hitters here before we get into the top 10 breakdown. Listen to this. Northwestern is ranked at 55, actually in between that Kentucky and Mississippi State juggernaut around the 50s. 55. That is 38 spots ahead of where he's got Michigan State? Michigan State was a better team than Northwestern was last year and improved this year. Northwestern hasn't improved to any near extent of being 38 spots ahead of Michigan State. Hell, Northwestern's 20 spots ahead of Toledo, for heaven forbid. I could tell you what, if they played tomorrow, everyone's putting their money on the Toledo Rockets right there, man, against the Northwestern Wildcats. Houston and Syracuse ranked in the top 35 of the country. I mean, honestly, this is just getting out of control here. Houston is a 4-8 team for coming back from last year, has nowhere near made the improvements that many other teams in the Big 12 has this year coming in. We just don't know where they're going to do. We got the Vanderbilt Commodores, who look, nice little story last year. All right, 7-5 this year, much tougher schedule, probably a 5-win team this year. I don't care what Diego thinks he is going to do out there on that field. He's only got so much talent around him, and the schedule doesn't produce really great results for him this year at Vanderbilt. They're ranked above Georgia Tech. Again, Georgia Tech, in my opinion, is top 4 in the ACC, and Vanderbilt is bottom 5 going into this year. I'm going to put them just above Kentucky, just above Mississippi State, somewhere in the vicinity of Arkansas, although I believe Arkansas is better than Vanderbilt going into the year. So, anyways, that's where we are there with that. What else did we have there? We got Tennessee ranked over South Carolina and Texas A&M going into the year. Listen, I think Tennessee is probably going to take a big step back from where they were last year, playoff spot. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs this year. And I think South Carolina and Texas A&M both have a chance to make the playoffs this year. I just don't see Tennessee being able to get through this schedule with enough wins to get to 9 wins is where it's going to take to even have a chance. And I just don't see it. So to be ranked ahead of South Carolina and Texas A&M going into the season, again, just all right, let's look at this top 10 and tell him where he's wrong here in this lineup, which, look, my teams and his teams in the top 10 are very, very similar. They're just mixed around a little bit differently. Starting off there with Texas, Ohio State, Oregon, Notre Dame, Georgia, Clemson, Penn State, LSU, Alabama, and Oklahoma. All right, that's the top 10 in the RJ Young Fox Sports poll that was all over today. Now, I have already told you earlier in the video that I think if you look at Clemson and you look at their depth at the offensive line and defensive line, football's won in the trenches, folks, and these two position groups on this team are elite. I'm talking top-notch, if not the number 1 team in the country, the number 2 team in both units in the country. And I'll tell you who the number 2 team is in a second. But they have a top 2 wide receiving core at Clemson. They got a quarterback that has 2 and almost a half years of experience, probably 2.5 years of playing experience in the old way of 13 games a season. He's got a secondary that is top-notch, a linebacking core that is in the top 10. They got a running back that's the question mark, and they got a super freshman coming in. I think we'll get some carries there. Gideon Davidson. This is a really loaded football team at Clemson. And to say they're not in the top 2 is outrageous. It's the same thing with the Penn State Nittany Lions. Look, I'm no giant fan of Penn State by any means. I think James Franklin's an underachiever in many ways and hasn't been able to win the big games. But that doesn't take away that they have, again, an offensive line and defensive line, both in the top 2, top 3 at worst in the country coming in. Experience, talent, physicality, everything you need to win in college football happens in the trenches. We just talked about with Clemson, and this team is loaded in the trenches. They got the best 1-2 running back in Singleton and Katron Allen in the country, bar none. Top 3 running backs in the country next to Jeremiah Love at Notre Dame. These 2 guys would start on any team, probably in the damn NFL right now. So how can you say, and again, Penn State's defense is lined up with starters up and down, starting with the defensive line, again, in the trenches. The only place this team, Clemson had a running back to find. They need to find production in the tight end and receiving game at Penn State, which they brought in some transfers. They do have to replace Warren's production, but whatever. They got a lot of talent around this team, and to take them and not put Clemson in 1 and 2 with Penn State or Penn State and Clemson, I don't care how you want to rack them up, but those are the two most talented teams coming back in the country, starting off the season. And that's where we're at. We're called preseason. It's starting off the season. Look at it, not projecting out what you think this guy may do or this guy could do. What we already see in the production. And the production on these two teams is top notch. All right, let's talk about this group here. Texas, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Alabama, Georgia. That group of teams right there. Number 1, 2, Oregon, number 3, Notre Dame 4, Georgia 5, Alabama he's got down there at 9. We'll keep LSU out of this because they do got a returning quarterback. And we'll keep Oklahoma out of this conversation because they do have a starter from another school transferring in. But let's talk about those schools. Now, in my Baker's dozen, I had Texas at 3, I had Ohio State at 4, I had Alabama at 5, I had Notre Dame at 6, I had Georgia at 7, and I had Oregon at 8. And one thing all these teams have in common, yes, they all have talent coming back at all levels of on the team, offensively, defensively, wherever you want to talk about. They have talent coming back. But what they're missing, the most important thing in college football, outside of the head coach, is the quarterback. In none of these teams, Texas, yes, they have Arch Manning coming in to start. We think we know what Arch Manning is based off what his uncles were years ago in college football and the NFL. And it's not fair to say Arch Manning is going to come out here and be the end-all, be-all. He may as well be. But he could also just be a very suitable quarterback that's going to be efficient and get you down the field. But to put them at number 1 with a questionable offensive line, again, experienced but not challenged, a defensive line that is not bringing back a whole lot of players that were starters, but are bringing back some, role players that are going to get starting time. They do have good players in the other positions, wide receiver at Texas. You got Ohio State with the best wide receiving core in the country with obviously Jeremiah Smith. You got Oregon with, some talented running back transfer and a superstar freshman receiver coming in. But again, Dante Moore's a question. You got Notre Dame with a great defense. But again, question on who's going to start. Has anybody even heard? CJ Carr? Who's it going to be? We got Georgia. Again, Gunnar Stockton. He did get some time in that playoff game last year. He looked okay at times. He looked terrible at times. Bottom line is, we don't know what he's going to do. So to put these teams ahead of a Clemson and a Penn State, which is coming back in production. And a lot of these teams, look, Georgia doesn't have a lot of skill position coming back. They got a lot of transfers coming in. Who knows how that's going to work in going into the Georgia system into this year. Notre Dame, again, greatest running back in the game right now in Jeremiah Love, but they can't just rely on him all day long. Oregon is counting on Dante Moore. Ohio State, I just watched the press conference with Ryan Day. They don't have a guaranteed starter, although I do think it's Julian Sand. But all of these teams have a lot of question marks. Ohio State has 3 defensive players coming back. Yes, by far one is the number 1 team or player in the country defensively in Caleb Downs, but that doesn't mean that they're going to be great. Now, Alabama, great players up and down. They got to get a quarterback that can actually play and lead this team down the field. All right, let's talk about LSU. Now, I had LSU at number 10 in my poll. They got them at number 8. I think that's a good spot for LSU. I don't think they can beat Clemson on the road early in the season. We'll see. Oklahoma, great potential defense. We'll see what John Mateer does this year over there at Oklahoma. And if he can get this offense going, if he can get it going, this could be a juggernaut team in the top 5 in the country. But we'll see. Challenging schedule there at Oklahoma. So, I don't disagree with his teams necessarily. I disagree with the way they put them into place. And of course, Fox wants the 1 versus 2 matchup at noon on opening day. So they're going to get this, they're going to get in their poll rank this way. Now, I did see that the AP poll came out when I was prepping for this video, and they also have Texas as number one. Again, I think it's an Arch Manning phenomenon, and I don't think I'm going to buy into the hype just yet. Till he comes into Columbus, puts on a show, and gets everyone thinking that this team is loaded. But again, offensively, in the offensive line and in the defensive line, they need work, and we all know this game is won in the trenches, folks. And this team may or may not have that ability, just like Ohio State. Inside defensive line, can they produce enough depth to get through a 16-game season, which is what it's going to take, or at least a 15-game season to win a national championship here again at Ohio State? Oregon, can Dante Moore, can he show the flashes of brilliance that he had at UCLA a few times? Yes, the talent's better, but come on. And then LSU. Look, I think LSU could win the national championship, and I think LSU could be 7-5. I think it really depends on how this team jumps out against Clemson to start the season. And then they got Florida a couple weeks later, and they got to go to Alabama. And they just got a very challenging year ahead of them. And if they get the skill position and the defense cleaned up a little bit, they could go a long way. They got great receivers. They can find a running back. You know, Garrett Nussberger is a great quarterback in the SEC. So but I just think the problem is LSU's going to lose 3 games. And if they lose 4, they're out. If they lose 3 with this schedule, they're in. So we'll see where they go with that. All right, let's talk about some teams that I think are ranked way too high in this poll. And this will be teams outside the top 10. So let's start with Indiana, ranked at 11, and Illinois ranked at 16. I'd flop those teams if I was him. I think Illinois has more skill, more talent coming back to start the season. Indiana could have more skill and more talent at the end of the season, but I think starting the season, experience and depth, Illinois is deeper at the beginning than Indiana. Now, Indiana has a crap schedule to start the season, so we'll see where they get to. Michigan at number 12, I think is just too high. I mean, Underwood could be a phenom freshman, but the truth of the matter is phenom freshmen don't go out and win national titles. Tell me the last phenom freshman that won a national title for the beginning of the season to the end of the season, leading his team through the juggernaut of college football, especially in these major conferences that are going to win the national title, the Big 12 and the SEC. How are you going to get through it as a freshman? You're just not. Michigan's overranked here. Tennessee, same thing. They shouldn't be ranked this high with teams like South Carolina and Texas A&M and ranked. Now, I don't think Tennessee should be below Ole Miss or Missouri, but I think they're ranked too high in this poll. I think Kansas State being the first ranked Big 12 team is a joke. It's the 4th ranked Big 12 team coming into the season. Arizona State and Baylor. And if you want to put what Texas Tech has done, I'm not sold on Texas Tech yet with a bunch of transfers. But anyways, we'll give them whatever they want. Kansas State is overranked when comparing to where Arizona State, Baylor, Utah, Iowa State is ranked. These teams are equally as good, if not better, which leads us to Colorado, 25. Listen, I love Dion. I love the Buffaloes. I love everything about what's going on out there. But, did I mention they got a freshman quarterback too? So how are they going to get through their struggles of another season without a great offensive line, without great talent players up and down the field, and playing Arizona State and Baylor? I don't even know if they play Baylor, but I don't think they do. But anyways, the bottom line is Colorado is overranked here at 25. Who else did I see that was overranked? Obviously, Houston and Syracuse. I've already talked about this earlier. Houston is not a greatly improved football team over their 4-8 year last year. They didn't make a lot of moves. They're not ranked. They're too high. Syracuse is too high. The Kansas Jayhawks are too high. The North Carolina Tar Heels are too high. The Vanderbilt Commodores are too high. The Arizona Wildcats at 38, too high. Look, I love old, what's his name? Noah Fatella or something like that. One of my favorite quarterbacks in college football to watch. Boise State ranked at 40. Now, I just mentioned these teams that they're ranked behind: Syracuse, Florida State, North Carolina, Vanderbilt, Arizona. And then Boise State at 40? Huh, unbelievable. Just continues to be joke after joke. Washington at 49, way underranked. Washington is being way overlooked up here in the Jedfish second year at Washington Huskies. They got three monster road games coming in to Seattle. They've got the Ohio State Buckeyes, they've got Illinois, and they've got Oregon, all going to Husky Stadium in Seattle, Washington. And I'm telling you, this team is going to pull an upset or two and be much better than a 49 preseason ranking. All right, Memphis at 45 is ranked too low. Who else do we have too low? Arizona State at 23 is too low. Nebraska, Iowa. I think Iowa is ranked too high at 29. I think Nebraska has some options and opportunity to be good. So 30 is a good spot for them. I think, where'd they have JMU at? Where's that crazy little logo? I'm at 50. 50. James Madison at 50. Just above Kentucky. I can promise you that's not going to be where they end up at. They're going to be much higher ranked than that at the end of the season. So, at the end of the day here, folks, this is just a calamity on our intelligence of what we know to be true. And what we know to be true in college football is that when you have really strong interior on the offense and defensive lines coming back, you have skill position players that produced the final or the prior season. You have those players coming back in multiple positions. And I mean by quarterback, running back, leading wide receiver. You got these positions coming back, and you got offense and defensive line skill coming back. Those are the teams that are going to make the real push, especially early on. And those teams are being underappreciated here in this poll. And I think it's tremendously inaccurate to come out with this kind of ranking. And I just had to make sure that you understood where I stood on this. So remember, gather round in ALTT.